Well, here at home, President Ramaphosa also joining other world leaders in condemning the shooting, saying political violence is the antithesis of democracy. International relations expert is André Thomashausen, who joins us now for analysis of what has happened in Pennsylvania. Professor, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. So, as we say, President Ramaphosa joining other world leaders here at home to condemn what happened to the former President Trump. Let's understand and get your initial thoughts on these developments.
Well, thank you, Corey, and listeners. I think from outside, the first thought that came to my mind is that, unfortunately, there will be many million American voters that are actually sorry, that are full of regret that candidate Trump survived the assassination attempt, because the country is extremely divided. Some observers believe America is even on the brink of another civil war. The emotions are running extremely high. A huge number of people believe it will be the end of America and maybe even the end of the world should candidate Trump win. And in this heightened, nearly hysterical atmosphere where, of course, Trump's rhetoric and strong-worded comments inflame the situation further, we have this bizarre situation of a 20-year-old son of a clinical psychologist who, the father, bought the gun for his son. And the son goes and finds a place on a roof 140 meters away from the action. Anyone who knows a little bit about shooting knows that a pistol has a maximum range of maybe 70 meters. An AK-47 is only effective about 120 meters. So you need a specialized rifle, and you need to have practiced enormously to be able to land a shot at 140 meters. He apparently fired 3 shots. One of them grazed President Trump's ear and fortunately didn't cause any tragic result. But then the next most amazing thing is that the American Secret Service, which protects the VIPs and the candidates, managed to fire back and kill this youngster at a 140-meter distance. So one of them, at least one of them, must have had a rifle, because with their normal service pistols, they would never even have reached that roof.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned, Professor, the identity of the shooter, because that person has since been killed. He's been named as Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old, and as you relay the story, the gun was bought by his father. World leaders saying that almost in unison in describing this shooting incident as, quote unquote, an act of political violence. Do we know, Professor, at this stage, what the motive could have been? I know you said earlier that emotions are very high in America right now. The country is very divided.
Yes, but we must also not overlook that in this month of July alone, there have been 134 mass shootings in America, where the mass shooting is defined as a shooting with more than 4 victims. So this is several mass shootings a day. America has become very violent. There's a growing number of unstable people that manage to buy very high-powered rifles, very high-powered and specialized ammunition, and they find opportunity to train. If you want to practice shooting over 150 meters, you need to find an area in a forest or somewhere where you can actually do this, and you have to practice for hours, for many days. So this shows a terrible light on the curse of free gun ownership in America. I will be very curious to see if the Republican Party might now review their defense of the freedom of gun ownership, because there isn't another country in the world where people can be armed with military-grade weapons and acquire them basically without any checks or any training. So this is another issue. America has really suffered. The normal people in America have suffered and are living in fear in many cities because of the daily shootings. So maybe it wasn't really that political. Maybe this was an insecure, deranged youngster who didn't find the right support in his home. Instead of supporting him, they bought him a gun. It happens that they're members of the Democrat Party, but I don't think at this stage we could speculate that they maybe encourage the son. President Biden has, of course, also offered his sympathies and condolences, and maybe the security measures in future will be improved by the use, for instance, of very normal, cheap civilian drones, so that one can survey the roofs of neighboring buildings, and maybe, just maybe, the two candidates will see fit to moderate their talk. It is very inflammatory on both sides.
Yeah. Professor, two quick questions before we end the conversation. You bring up the question of the ownership of guns in America. Gun laws immediately spring into this conversation because President Trump has previously been a strong proponent of people owning these dangerous weapons. The gun that was certainly used in his attempted assassination, we understand it to have been a semi-automatic rifle. Should he start being perhaps the number one person championing at least the screening of people when they are going to buy guns?
Yes, one would think so, but there is an enormously powerful gun lobby who will basically reason that 1/3 of Americans are armed to their teeth, and for the other 2/3 to be safe, they also have to be armed to their teeth. Now, that logic, of course, is deeply flawed, and it is the oldest foundation of a civilized state, that the power to use violence, to use lethal force, is something that only the state can have. If every private person has that power, we will see daily tragedies. The gun lobby in America is, of course, standing up for a very large industry. It employs hundreds of thousands of people. It is a little bit similar to many good souls in the world asking for peace, for instance, in the Ukraine, when millions of jobs are depending on the continual production of arms by the arms industry. How to attack this issue is very difficult. Here in South Africa, we also have the curse of too many guns in the hands of criminals and very frequent usage of those guns. A gun-free society is difficult to achieve. Countries like Norway managed to have their entire adult population having done military service and being capable of handling a firearm, having been trained, and they have very few abuses. Switzerland too. Switzerland, all males are in the reserve force, and they all keep their guns at home, and they have very few gun incidents. So maybe a better training, a policy that will, of course, take many, many years to implement, can prevent these things from happening. Except we all know, just like we have drivers that are drunk and cause a terrible accident, we will have people that are not acting responsibly. Even the checks cannot always protect us from it, because we even have pilots that suddenly turn crazy and fly the aircraft full of passengers into a mountain and kill everybody, and nobody detected it. Nobody found out that this person was no longer stable. We will hopefully see a renewal of gun control discussions in the United States.
To end the conversation, Professor, I want to directly link the question of the ownership of guns in America, and clearly in some instances by people who are very unstable. You link that to what you said earlier, and that is that America is a very divided country right now. and especially ahead of these upcoming elections. In 2026, that country is going to host the world showpiece, the FIFA World Cup. Do you think that incidents such as what I've outlined to you might mitigate against the world football body hosting the World Cup there?
That's a very difficult decision for FIFA. I think FIFA has stayed away from politics. There has been very strong lobbying for them not to hold it in Qatar, for instance, because of human rights issues. Wherever they go, there will be critical issues that might increase the risk of an incident, of an attack. So I remember the Olympic Games in Munich in 1973, where a movement then known as Black September, sort of a precursor of Hamas, went and caused a terrible massacre amongst the Israeli athletes. Nobody could foresee it. FIFA will continue the sport with millions and millions and hundreds of millions of people all over the world who love it. Will not be changing venues. America, of course, it is the most powerful country with the most powerful infrastructures. They will have all the means to secure the spectators and to protect the games. The unforeseen event can always happen. I don't think we can guard in any better way. We had terrorism in Russia. We had terrible attacks on schools in Russia. We had terrorism in China. It will happen, and gun ownership law alone will not eliminate this, because we know from South Africa that the people who use firearms to kill are not people that have licensed firearms. They acquire these firearms illegally, or they steal them. So it's only up to a certain point that one can try and have early warning systems. And maybe this is where society must become more proactive to notice, to become active when they see that somebody is in trouble, that somebody doesn't speak to anybody anymore, that somebody becomes strange.
Yeah.
And with somebody that's 20 years old, the school might have picked up something and done some counseling. So the tragedy has happened, and most fortunately, the American primaries, because this is the stage where the parties select their candidates, and they do it in a very open and democratic fashion, different from here in South Africa. There's a long process of many months for each state in the United States to select their candidate. And at this stage, it would have been terrible if the forerunner for the Republican Party had perished.
Yeah, and perhaps that leads me to that very, very final question now that you've prompted it, especially with the mention of the primaries. We know that President Trump has yet to get the actual endorsement from the Republican Party. That national convention is coming soon, we understand, and that's where perhaps he will get that formal endorsement. Do you think that this incident will make the Republican Party even more determined to have him as the official candidate for president?
A few months ago, some leading journalists here in South Africa would have dismissed as crazy the proposition that Trump could become president again. Now he is getting closer and closer. The Supreme Court has confirmed his immunity as a former state president. He cannot be prosecuted for things he did while he was a president. And we see him scoring. We see his ratings everywhere in America going up. And they will probably, again, go up quite a notch next week. Also with the uncertainty surrounding the decision of the Democrat Party, whether they will stick to their candidate, Biden, or maybe find a younger candidate, or rather opt for the current Vice President, Pamela Harris, which would be very sensational to have a first woman president in America. But of course, their focus will be on who might be the better proposition to the voters better than candidate Trump.
André Thomashausen, let me thank you very much, a professor in international relations. Thank you very much for your time.